Okay, and we are live. So welcome to part two of the Dangerous Demo Revisited. So these are just short Q&A sessions to give us a chance to do a deeper sort of questioning around the presentations that were given at TAD Summit in November last year. So I'm going to kick off and move straight to Arta. So the first question for you, and these have just been emailed in, was would you describe some Juju deployment cases?
So regarding deployment cases, there are terms which are available for hundreds of common and popular cloud-oriented applications, such as MySQL, MongoDB, Big Data, and others. And you can check the list of those charms and bundles on the jujucharms.com. But in general, Juju excels with the scales out workloads like Big Data, PaaS, cloud infrastructure, VNFs, and OpenStack, all container management systems. So for those various type of workloads, from the production deployment perspective, the most interesting and the biggest right now are related to the OpenStack. So all Ubuntu OpenStack deployments and canonical deployments of the Ubuntu OpenStack are based on the MAS and Juju. So you can see Juju utilized in production for the various OpenStack customers. So that's the most interesting case from the production perspective. But we also have use cases when our users are utilize Juju to consume Hadoop bundles. Bundles is a collection of charms, so it's a Juju provided infrastructure which let you to deploy, scale, and then enhance model provided with Juju. So that's another example of the PaaS type of workloads is a Cloud Foundry. You can also deploy using Juju. I mentioned Docker or machine learning solutions. Yeah. So those are some examples of the deployments you can do with Juju. But again, every day there are new charms, new bundles on the jujucharms.com. So I would recommend you to go there and check what's new.
That's great. And that leads on nicely to, and this was a question that came in several different forms, but it's all around what does it take to charm an application? How much effort is required? So there's several questions on that. So this is, I think, one a lot of people are interested in understanding.
All right. So Juju is just a collection of scripts and metadata. So you can get started quickly by copying existing charm.
Okay.
And then you can use language of your choice. It is normal to get something quickly, some quick and dirty working solution in Bash. Okay. So usually it depends on the complexity of the workload or your solution and how familiar you are with some system engineering and DevOps practices and programming. But it takes usually less than a week, sometimes a day. Okay. I saw some workloads charm in a few hours. But again, it depends really on the complexity. We have experience with very complex solutions like SDNs when you have to charm your SDN solution and integrate with the OpenStack, and relatively simple one service-based workloads, and those can be charmed very, very quickly. So you have to work on the prototype. Again, usually it's a Bash, but then people switch to more sophisticated language as the charm takes shape and becomes more complex. Yeah. We need to remember charms are codes, so that's operational code, and you have to think about this way. Gotcha. So obviously, it's a good idea to use the revision control system from the start. Collaborate with colleagues. consider including the test suites, so you can automatically verify the quality of your charm. And there are tools and practices which supports this approach. When you go to the jujucharms.com documentation, there is a developer's guide. There are examples of the code for various type of charms.
Yeah.
So you can reuse this to start building your own charm, and then use this charm to assemble the bundle, which might utilize charms you develop for your product, or use existing. If your product is, for example, utilizing the MySQL database or other solution, you can then incorporate this subsystem into your bundle, so you have then you can consume work of others. So
Understood.
there is no need to repeat that.
Gotcha. So there's a good knowledge base to take advantage of. You can cut and paste, but it's between a few hours to a week to get something set up. And as always, it's how long's a piece of string. It just depends on the complexity of the workload you're charming.
Yeah, there is also very good community and support. So if you go to the Juju IRC channel of Freenode, there is usually a few hundred people there, and there is also a mailing list you can find on the address on the jujucharms.com with the whole Juju engineering, Juju ecosystem, and community members active on the IRC channel and the mailing list. So that's an excellent source of knowledge. They are very responsive. I saw them usually responding in a few minutes.
Excellent. Excellent. That's cool. And then this came in from actually quite a few of the telcos. Was what's the future of Juju, and how does it relate to NFV?
So Juju from Canonical perspective is one of the most important open source projects supported by Canonical. And I mentioned there is an engineering team and community working on new features. And you can see those new features like network spaces for more sophisticated network configurations, or support for CentOS or Windows.
Yeah.
And those new features comes with every new Juju release, and you see those few releases during the year. So you can expect more features and interesting charms and bundles from so new features from the Juju engineering team, and charms and bundles from the Juju user community.
Yeah.
It's growing every day. From telco perspective, there will be a lot of interesting announcement about the Juju in telco space during the Mobile World Congress.
Okay.
So stay tuned.
Cool.
In general, in NFV, Juju, so that's the second part of your question, how this could be related to the NFV. So network function virtualization. In this space, Juju currently is utilized in two main areas. One is to deploy OpenStack and environment, and again, OpenStack is an example of the complex workload, and Juju is a very good or perfect fit for the complex workloads. So we have Juju utilized to deploy OpenStack environments. So in NFV language, that's NFVI.
Yeah.
And Vim, and for those OpenStack environments, you can assemble various options for SDN, SDS, and hypervisor like KVM, VMware, Hyper-V, or LXD containers.
Yeah.
All those options you can select and define in your architecture for the OpenStack deployment you would like to see in your data center.
Yeah.
Or you can reuse predefined bundles which encode good practices in architecture.
Cool.
So that's one domain. Another space is Juju as a generic VNF manager.
Yeah.
There is a growing understanding that the Juju is the best fit for this role, to provide the VNF management functionality for various type of VNFs and vendors. And we are now working with the few tier 1 operators. And again, at the Mobile World Congress, there will be a lot of interesting announcements about the generic VNF manager and how Juju is utilized to implement the generic VNF manager. Because industry needs such open source solution they can utilize for multi-vendor environments and orchestrates various VNFs from all those vendors who are active in the telco space.
Gotcha. Cool. No, that's excellent, Arta. Thanks so much. Do any of the group here have any comments or anything additional they'd like to add to what Arta said? If not, we will move on. So again, Arta, thanks so much for that. So moving on to you, Jean. So the first question we had in is, what was your experience in Juju Charming RESCOM?
Okay, the experience was, we're actually, I think, one of the first contributor to jump on the Juju bandwagon. The experience was pretty good, as Arthur mentioned, in terms of working in the open source. I mean, Telestax has been working in the open source forever, just as Canonical. So this model of collaborating makes a lot of sense to us, and the collaboration with Canonical went pretty well. As Arthur mentioned, the resources either on the IRC forums or on the mailing list were pretty responsive and pretty fast in terms of trying to integrate our charms into the Juju Charm Store. So we had pretty good experience with that. In terms of technical itself, in terms of layering our own software, so we actually charmed two components of the RESCOM platform. One is the RESCOM core, which is exposing the APIs basically of the telecommunication provider through simple APIs that can be consumed by web developers. And this part was one of the charm. The second one was the load balancer. So we kind of phased it into two approach. First, we started with the core of the platform, and then we moved, make it kind of iteratively, again, following the same release early, release often motto that we use in the open source, but this time with more partners. So with Canonical, with Clearwater as well, we went on, and with TrueFun, went on from each dangerous demo to make it more, showcasing more features and more stuff as we were moving forward.
Cool.
So it was kind of a phased approach, which allowed us to have a good understanding of Juju itself, and then apply it to more of the rest of the platform. So the experience was pretty good for us.
Cool. And I think that's a key point that Arta made and you're making in terms of taking an incremental approach, sort of starting simple and then just building and building and building on that. So that's great advice. What benefits does Juju Charming RESCOM bring?
Okay, so in RESCOM, we actually have two ways of deploying RESCOM. One is directly on the cloud. So if you want to deploy RESCOM on the Amazon cloud, by example, or RESC-Space, that's one deployment model where you can basically use Amazon AMI, like Amazon Images, to deploy your software. But then when you need to deploy on-premise to the operator, and if they have each one of them a different type of private cloud, make it OpenStack-based clouds or HP-based clouds. So there is tons of variants out there of private cloud for NFV. Juju basically abstracts all of that for you. So you don't have to really care about what type of operating system you're running on. It's kind of virtualized for you, and what you care is only about deploying and orchestrating your software. So when you want to deploy, you don't need to understand, okay, which platform do I need to deploy on? Juju will take care of that for you. What you really focus on is your own business logic, which is opening the ports that you need to open so that the communication can happen, and defining the relationship between the components of the platform so that you can actually deploy the platform. So that I would say that's one part, the abstraction layer from the environment, from the OS or you want to deploy on. the second part was kind of orchestrating. So one of the demos we demonstrated was the auto-scaling of an operator network through Juju, Clearwater with TrueFun. And we're able to demonstrate that with load, Juju, kind of cumulated with an open source monitoring tool called Zabbix.
Yeah.
The open source monitoring tool was capable of monitoring which nodes were starting to be overloaded and was communicating with Juju to actually start off new nodes without any human intervention. So you kind of auto-scale up and down your network based on demand. So you're more effectively consuming the resource you need at any given point in time, and not necessarily having to fire up 10 instances and then go manually to take them down. Yeah. So it kind of automates your own deployments, which is one of the other very important point for us. As when we deploy RESCOM to operators, we want to give them as much as possible innovation, not only on the technical front, but also on the operational front.
Exactly. No, that's an excellent point. And James, just interested to get your perspective with your telco hat on, in terms of your experiences as being part of this dangerous demo, particularly around the auto-scaling piece.
Well, the auto-scaling is impressive in itself. The fact that we can deploy infrastructure that's capable of handling really quite large amounts of traffic. I'm just trying to think, how big do we get? I think we got up to about 80,000 concurrent calls or something like that.
Yeah.
Our target was, I think we were trying to get to 100,000, but 80,000 is good enough, I think. But and that proved that the stuff that we can build actually is very, very scalable. But I think the single biggest advantage is the speed with which you can deploy this stuff. To push out or to put a conventional mobile infrastructure on the ground would take months, years of detailed engineering work.
Yeah.
Whereas the demo that we put together for TAD Summit was literally thrown together, and most of the work was done in the last week.
Yeah.
And to be able to do that at that kind of speed and then handle the levels of traffic that we did was just truly amazing.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And then at the end of the day, the cost of that infrastructure was tiny.
Yeah, did we actually get a price? Because I think that was what we were trying to aim for.
Yeah, because we kind of did that in Istanbul the year before. I think we did that demo, and we worked out that the cost of the AWS services was something like $1.86 or something ridiculous like that. We went a bit bigger this year, but I don't think we actually remembered to check on the cost of it. I think it was probably on Arta's AWS account, so he's probably the man who's got the answer. But I don't know. But it wouldn't have been very much.
No. But we'll take that as an action for Arta. If he can dig it out, and then we'll put it up on the weblog, because I think that would be a nice result to show. Because, as you said, getting to 80,000 simultaneous calls was quite impressive.
It was.
Cool. So back to you, Jean. Just the last question that we had was, what are the latest updates on RESTCON?
Okay, there is pretty much a lot of updates there. So, in addition to Juju, we are trying to work with a number of partners, as we have done in the past. And at the last TAD Summit, there was a new partner called Data Art coming into the picture that shows quite a number of impressive capabilities with Docker and Mesos as well. So we're trying to work with them on scaling that even bigger. So integrating all those technologies together. So kind of coupling the telecom side and the Juju orchestrating side with the layering of Docker on top of it, so that we can auto scale all those technologies together. One other component is that we changed recently is we actually rebranded the MobiSense community up to RESCOM community. So that's quite a big change, and we started this MobiSense baby about 13 years back, and now we noticed that RESCOM has taken quite a good feedback in the field and in the community as well. So as RESCOM itself is exposing the rest of the telecom capabilities in a simple manner, it made sense for us to migrate from MobiSense to Rescom, and so that all the products from the MobiSense become part of the Rescom platform. As the Rescom is basically exposing the rest of the traditional niche, very expert telecom sites into simple, consumable API for web developers or mobile native application developers.
Cool.
Some other things that that we launched also is that we started a new program called the Telestax Certified Partner Program, where our partners actually contribute to the open source community as well, so that we really have a strong ecosystem of partners that are specialized and that can be expert on the technologies. And it's been going pretty well. We have, I think, 12 partners already signing up since the beginning of the year. Cool. And we are seeing a number of contributions. So probably in the next quarter or so, we'll see contributions on the side of geolocation from Locatrix, QoS from My Mobile Coverage, XMS from Dialogic, and there is other ones more on the traditional telco sides onto the SS7 stack, SIP servlet, Gens application server, but it's a bit more technical.
Yeah.
So not as much in context as what we have done in as part of the TAD Summit. One other thing is we are moving forward pretty fast on the mobile WebRTC SDKs.
Cool.
So
that's great.
It's going to be final probably in the next quarter as well. So that people can start to use it in the field on a pretty bigger scale.
Yeah.
And we are finalizing also the integration with one other partner, which is Dialogic on the media server side. So Rescom is getting capable of talking to the Dialogic XMS media server, so that we can also do transcoding for the WebRTC side if you need to transcode between video codecs like H.264, VP8, VP9, and H.265 coming up.
Cool.
So there is quite some activity there, and there is a lot more coming in the span of this year. So.
Yeah, no, that's excellent, and it's great to see the community coming together and making all these contributions. Also, finally, MobiSense is now Rescom, single brand.
Exactly.
It's always a problem with engineering-led organizations. Every product has its own name, and you're left with, there's too many names. It's so nice when it's like down to, it's Rescom, and there's Rescom Visual Designer, and it makes it so easy to remember.
Exactly, that's the whole point.
Yeah, cool. No,
we're listening to the community.
Exactly, cool. And yeah, Michael was on for part 1 last week from DataArt, and he was sharing what he was doing there. And I'm hoping we can get DataArt to run a few locations. So fingers crossed we can get a TADHack Kiev in October. That'll be cool. And
I would be willing to help on that location.
You just need to be a little bit worried about where Russia is, but anyway. And then we've got next week on TAD Summit Revisited, we've also got Sebastian Schumann. He'll be talking about the work that he's been doing from Slovak Telecom. Again, Rescom was a key part of his hack in April at TADHack London, and then from London to November at TAD Summit, he was able to get a service up and running and deployed on a cloud-based instance of Rescom. So again, we've got some, we've had and we will have some great examples of Rescom in practice. So that leads me on. Now we're talking about cloud to Philippe. So over to you now. Now, all that we demonstrate in the Dangerous demo is cloud-based. And of course, you've built up a whole range of cool services and platforms for the cloud. So moving on from focusing on Juju, focusing more on what does it take to create server success in the cloud. So first question that we had in was, in creating widget for call, which of course Apidaze is very well known for, what were the important considerations to run that platform and service in the cloud?
Yes. Well, as a reminder, widget for call is a click-to-call, very simple click-to-call service. It's meant for developers and for people who are not really developers as well. So you just copy and paste HTML code, put it on your website, and you get a click-to-call service that is up and running. So there are two key functions actually in Widget for Call, and in deploying this service in the cloud that are interesting. The two key functions are the web server itself, the back office server, and the SIP infrastructure management function that's behind it. Mm-hmm. So from a back office perspective, when you use Widget for Call, you're supposed to be able to answer the calls either on your phone when you're an agent, or using WebRTC and directly from the back office. So that makes the first consideration that is important when you're deploying the service in the cloud is the latency. You have to keep the latency very, very small, so that you have a good quality in the communication. So you have to consider where to put your server, and we actually have several locations for the web server itself. We have locations in Europe, and we started 2 other servers in the East Coast of the US and in the West Coast as well. And the thing is that we are using also these servers for our API, so that all the customers of Apidaze can benefit from that.
Exactly.
And when you consider the SIP function, SIP infrastructure management function, then this is kind of different, because what is behind this is the ability to originate a call using a SIP trunk between 2 PSTN peers, or between one PSTN endpoint and WebRTC. So it's kind of different. You just have to place an order there, which can be, for instance, an HTTP request if we have an API for that, or it can be any other thing. But once you've queued the order, once you say that you wanted to launch the call, then you don't have any control over that. So it's not really important whether you have this server located. Obviously, you don't want to have a poor connection for it, but it's not as important as for the back office itself.
Yep, no, that's an excellent point. I mean, it's one of those things that isn't fully appreciated, all the latency issues in implementing these services. That's a great point. So, I mean, just following on from that, Widget for Call, maybe you could share some of the places where it's deployed today.
Yes, well, it's deployed in our servers in Europe, and as I mentioned it before, we also have locations in the US. Obviously, we would like to extend that, and we have plans to extend that to other parts of the world. Cool. Probably in Asia, because we had some requests over there. Yeah. And so for the moment, we have those locations, and we'll probably extend that to other parts of the world.
Gotcha, cool. And then just wrapping up, HotSpot won a lot of attention at the Web Summit. So just again, interested in, because you've implemented that quite quickly from concept to basically having something that was a viable product. So just interested in some of the challenges you've had in putting HotSpot together.
Yes, well, HotSpot is still in beta, and we are still working on it quite a lot. But it's really, as you said, it was really a challenge to have this quickly running. Yeah. But we already had kind of the infrastructure for the user base, because we are using Slack for HotSpot. So we don't have to manage users. Users are taken from Slack, and we just offer them the ability to get a phone number and get called and place calls from this phone number. So the challenge for that, well, it's kind of the same as for the back office of Widget for Call, because we're using WebRTC for HotSpot. Yeah. Well, we also have an option to transfer the calls to other numbers, to external numbers. So in this case, you won't use obviously WebRTC, but basically what you have with HotSpot is the ability to answer calls from your web browser. So you have to reduce the latency. Yeah. And as I said it before, we're using our servers in several locations for the back office of widget for call, and we obviously do that as well for HotSpot.
Gotcha.
So if you want to get a number in the US, when HotSpot started, you would have your number routed to one of our servers in Europe, which was not that good. We had 200 milliseconds of latency, and this is now fixed because we are able to route the calls directly to the proper server, to the nearest server, so you can answer your calls and have a reduced latency. So this is the main challenge, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Where would you put your servers when you want to run a WebRTC service that is accessible from anywhere in the world? And again, now it's much easier now to deploy servers in any location than it used to be. I remember when I started to work as a telecommunication engineer, it was really not easy, and it was really not cheap to have a server up and running anywhere. Now it's things are totally different. So we have a very good perspective on that, on this service to be extended to Australia and for instance to other parts of Asia as well.
Cool. Okay, that's excellent, Philippe. Thanks so much.
Alan, can I dive in and say
of course,
something?
go for it.
Add to that. Say something really nice about HotSpot. It's not often that you come across an application which is just brilliant from the word go, and HotSpot was one of those. We immediately, instinctively knew how to use it. And by the way, if you're listening to that, HotSpot is OTT spot, not just hotspot with a French accent. And again, it's a very clever name, over the top spot. But absolutely brilliant, particularly if you use Slack, as we do. And one of the things that we did, and we're continuing to work with Philippe in this, is we're adding a block of TruePhone mobile numbers to front-end HotSpot. So you'll be able to make and receive calls and send and receive SMS, hopefully, not yet, but hopefully in the near future, with your HotSpot client. And that, I think, would be pretty cool.
Absolutely. Yes, this is something we're working on with James and Andy. And yeah, I think we'll have that running pretty quickly now. So yeah, it's the thing about HotSpot, and I'm really glad that James said the interface was really easy to use, because Louis doesn't always say that to me.
Yeah, Louis.
So thank you, James. But the thing is that, well, we as telecom developers, obviously, our products are addressed to developers first. But we can see that things are a bit changing. When we developed Widget for Call, for instance, as I said, it was not really dedicated to target developers. And it's kind of the same for HotSpot. People who use HotSpot are not developers, but people who use Slack now tend to use what Slack calls slash commands, for instance, webhooks, which are terms that are really not well known by developers, and that now are started to get handled by people who are not developers. So this is a new landscape, I would say, of people we can address our projects to. So
exactly.
It's really interesting.
I think that is a very important point you raised there, Philippe, that the addressable market isn't coders anymore. It's non-coders, and the tools are being made so simple that you don't even need to have any programming training. It's simply what is the functionality you want to implement. So as long as you can understand the function, you can create it. So that's a very good point, Philippe.
Absolutely.
So just to wrap up, is there, I guess this is to everyone, where next for the Dangerous Jet demo through 2016? So Arthur, Jean, Amit, Evelyn, Philippe, any comments on where you think we'll be going with this Dangerous demo? Clearly, HotSpot will have to be part of it. but interested to get people's perspectives on what else we can do.
Just want to add a couple of words. Something that is worth mentioning on the side of Juju and and RESTCOM, and I hope to see that more with Apidaze for the next dangerous demo. The fact that Juju being so kind of transparent of roadmap and its benefits and its current issues and what needs to be worked on, and having that incorporated in this whole open source community, everybody participate and be transparent of what's happening. There's lots to be fixed, etc. We start to see folks like which I mentioned, DataArt, who are part of the community, and in the new iteration of the demo, they added an incredible value to compared to the first iteration from a year ago. They threw in Mesos and Zabbix, tools that are also open source and popular, and adding extra value. So a year ago it was whatever, it was a little bit harder to get it going with just Juju, but adding these extra tools, now it became clear this thing can scale massively. It can scale to at the level of Hadoop type of deployments. Yeah. And I'm hoping that with the HotSpot coming in, to be able to bring some of the Philippe can bring some of the community of developers that are building stuff around it, and show, hey, this is an app you added on top, and now you have it available to this global community anywhere, Australia or US. Yeah. Have people participate, have people add value. I think that's the whole point of being virtual and being part of a big open source community, the participation part.
Exactly. That's a very good point, Evelyn. Anybody else got any other comments? Arthur, James?
So as Evelyn said, we have very good base now for another iteration. So as we saw the difference between the first and second iteration, we should see also more interesting workloads in next iterations. So this already complex environment can be enhanced. We can add more functionality and implement services. And there's really no limit, because it's really easy to reuse the work of others and then add interesting use cases and deploy them very quickly, experiment, enhance. So I believe we will see more of those ideas coming from users and community.
Exactly. I think for me, we're just getting closer and closer and closer. That it's no longer a demo. It's a real service, in that we can just TAD Summit or TAD Hack just launch new services that could scale globally and could be available that day. So it's getting really exciting. That real,
especially that you can have those all those demos or the code is in the GitHub. Yeah. So literally everybody can take this and consume in a very in a few minutes. So.
Exactly. Yeah. Very good point. James, you were going to say something?
Yeah. My point was that all of these things are totally real. Yeah. And coming back to your first question, where do we go next? Well, there's a whole load of things that we're working on already. So Jean's already mentioned some of the advanced things we can do with location. It's exposing multiple ways of getting at location and making that available to the application layer. Exactly. We're going to be doing a whole load of stuff with authentication, so authentication as a service. Yeah. Once you've got an absolutely solid authentication mechanism, you can build a whole load of applications, different applications on top. Yet another area we're going to be playing with are the radio access network. So in particular, small cells. Yeah. With the deregularization of spectrum, it will be possible now for enterprises, for example, to buy and deploy their own small cell infrastructure. And when you've got your own small cell infrastructure with your own cloud-based back end, the sky's the limit. I mean, not a good time to be a Vodafone, is it really?
Well, a couple more years. They can still make hay.
It's an exciting time to be around because all these things that were just too complicated, too difficult,
Exactly.
people just couldn't do them before. Today, you can.
Exactly, and that's a very good point. So with that, thank you to everyone for taking part in this TAD Summit Revisited. Again, thanks a lot, guys, and see you soon.
Thanks.